On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are recapping one of the most nail-biting Eagles-Cowboys games we've seen in a long time. This is the Locked On Eagles podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. It's the post-game show, the final 28-23. The Birds take it over the Dallas Cowboys, and man, did that take every single second of all four quarters. The Cowboys driving all the way into Eagles territory. Looks like maybe they're about to lose this game. Darius Slay goes down. James Bradberry goes down. Josh Jobs in the game. Eli Ricks on the outside. And yet the Eagles hold tight. Gino, this team, it's crazy. It's almost like, somebody told me a quote one day about like peace and how, things in life, they always happen, right? Like peace isn't actually, there's no problems around you and you're going to find this, you know what I mean? Like you're never going to find this peace where nothing is wrong in your life. You have to find peace within turbulence. And this Eagles team is so good at that. It's like no matter how much adversity happens where corners are going down, your quarterback is hurt, the pass rush is not getting there, Dallas's pass rush is getting there, CeeDee Lamb is cooking your secondary. No matter what the situation is in these games against Washington last week, earlier in the year, when the passing game's not working, they find consistency when things are not consistent. And it's just that continued to be the theme again today. They found a way in a huge division matchup against a 5-2 Cowboys team where you're 7-1, heading into the bye week before a gauntlet of a schedule coming up. To get that win, again, was it pretty? Absolutely not. But it just shows the character of this team. And this core, they're going to come away with a ring at some point. If it's not this year, I've never trusted an Eagles team more. And this game just, again, was another example of that.
I 100% get what you're saying, finding peace in that turbulence, right? I'll go off of that quote. Somebody always told me anytime you experience turbulence on a flight, think about the pilot. He wants to get home just as badly as you. That pilot we always talk about, Jalen Hurts, man, like it's the QB. He sets the tone. Even if things aren't going 100% correctly, this guy, no matter what, you have to trust him and you have to trust this team right now, Lou, to step up when it matters. That game felt very poetic in so many different moments. I mean, from Julio Jones being on the field where you have to hold Dallas multiple times in the red zone to keep them from scoring a touchdown in what felt like a do-or-die game, as cliche as it was with the game of inches with Dak Prescott stepping out of bounds and Reed Blankenship holding them short of the goal line. It just felt in so many ways very reminiscent to everything we were talking about, the good old Eagles-Cowboys rivalry days. You talk about a instant classic, one you will always remember. Dude, this one, I mean, there's no way you're not going to remember this one. From the DeVonta Smith touchdown, which is the 11th most improbable completion of the year, to a near fumble that almost threw the game away where Tyler Steen has to recover it. But the Eagles, in the last poetic thing that I'll say, what they weren't able to do in that Super Bowl when the offenses were just going back and forth was the defense getting a stop. In that second half, Lou, that defense came up huge. 2 stops on downs, a punt, and then a fumble to end that football game. The offense, the defense, everything seemed to mesh, not in unison, but when it mattered situationally.
No, it's a great point. And again, things are never perfect. And in the NFL, that's never going to be the case. So that's why I trust this team so much. And against Dallas, it's a really good football team. And when you have the injuries they did to your general, to your pilot, as you're talking about, Jalen Hurts, a very scary leg injury in the second quarter, limping before halftime, you're wondering, here we go. Is Marcus Mariota going to have to come into this game? And yet Hurts comes back and he leads them right down the field. That DeVonta Smith touchdown was unbelievable. I mean, Jalen Hurts finished the day a 74% completion percentage, 243 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 turnovers today, by the way, which has been a thing that consistently comes up week after week. To do that in this spot, again, I mean, Jalen, I don't know what more to say about it. We made this take about A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. It's like, how many times can we say in different ways these two are elite? And that's what I'm feeling about Jalen Hurts now. I mean, the pocket presence today, the ball placement, he is not able to run the football right now, really at full strength, and he is still looking like, at least on money downs, the best quarterback in football. I mean, how many times on 3rd and 4th down today did they move the chains?
A lot. I mean, they've done it all season long. And today, I mean, hats off to Dak. Jalen Hurts had a total EPA of 17.3. Dak had a total EPA of 17.4.
Oh, he was great. 374 and 3 touchdowns today on the day for Prescott. He had a great game.
Absolutely ripped apart the Eagles secondary. But at the same time, the thing we kept saying about Jalen Hurts was if he eliminates those turnovers, and Lou, the one thing we always do say is find me that throw that he'll want to take back. That one into triple coverage was a little bit iffy where A.J. Brown had to kind of break it up. But the rest of the time, man, that I told you the DeVonta Smith backside dig was going to be there if they just let things hang out in the pocket. And Jalen ran when he needed to, and you knew that knee was not 100%. We were sitting there. Another moment that brings all these seasons together. You can't write this stuff. How reminiscent was it to the Carson Wentz moment when Carson walks back onto the field and then he goes into the blue tent and you're like, oh my God, what's happening? And that's exactly what happened with Jalen. He comes back out, finishes the drive, and then immediately goes into the locker room and you're saying, no way, this can't happen again. And then he comes back again, Lou, and has maybe his 2 closest MVP performances to what he was in 2022 over the last 2 weeks with 1.5 legs. Which is insane the way he is throwing the football. And the accuracy isn't off by an inch, dude. He is dropping these balls like Steph Curry in an all-star game. It is surreal.
I agree. And then you look at, I mean, A.J. Brown becomes the fastest Eagles receiver in franchise history to surpass 1,000 yards. Today he had 7 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. But I don't want it to go unshadowed or overshadowed when we're talking about DeVonta Smith. He had 3 catches for 51 yards and that touchdown. But, he also had a huge 3rd and long conversion. That big 3. Again, the numbers weren't as sexy today, but they really stepped up. So did Dallas Cowboys, 3 catches for 50 yards. He also got injured. It's an arm injury. Let's hope it's not a torn bicep or some broken bone. They need Goddard long-term. But I thought the passing game, because, again, the run game wasn't great today again. DeAndre Swift, 18 carries, 43 yards, only averaged 2.4 on the ground. They needed it again to throw the football. And this is a team that's becoming a unit that they throw the ball, and then when they need to, sometimes they can dial up that run game. But this has been a team lately that's been relying heavily on the passing game, and they're not doing it as – I don't know if manufactured is the right way to say it compared to last year, but it feels more traditional where Hurts just has to be in the pocket based on necessity, and they're still getting the job done.
There was a 3rd and 3 at one point on the broadcast, and Greg Olson's like, oh, this has to be a run, right?
Yeah.
And it was a pass, and I can't remember the exact call, but I think they ended up completing it for a 1st down, and that's exactly it. They trust him so much to do quite literally everything for this offense. And like you said, the run game wasn't getting going, and it hasn't gotten going as well as it has the first half of the season, to be frank. But teams it's such a double-edged sword. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to take away the Eagles' run game, and then you're going to be susceptible to DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Cowboys beating you on the back end. And then you go down and you want to take away the pass, well, they're going to run the ball, where at times they were ripping off the first run of the game. They rip off for 8 yards a clip. I mean, there are times when the Eagles are just downright dominant, and you saw flashes of that today. But all in all, Lou, you'll look at the stats of what Dallas did, right? And Dak put up crazy good numbers. But at the same time, when you had to win that football game, when you had to put up points when it mattered, when you had to keep Dallas from getting points, when you had to put together monster drive outside of the end, when you put together 3 drives that were double-digit plays that took over 6 minutes a pop, and each time you were in the red zone, you went 3 for 3, that's what we have been talking about, where this team can get to, and what a feeling to take this into the bye when you were banged. I mean, like you said, with Dallas goes out, Nakobe goes out, Jalen Hurts is half of who he has been.
Both corners go down. I mean, you already had your 3rd backup right guard in. I mean, everybody was getting injured.
And stock up already to the bye week. You get into this week, Lou.
At 8-1.
8-1. You talk about it wasn't a must-win game. We said this on the show last week in terms of making it to the playoffs. But right now, where you're not going to be able to make up any games on any teams next week, you came into this game, handled what you had to do. You're now 8-1. You're up 2.5 games in the NFC East. You're the best team in the NFL. While Kansas City is still winning football games, the Eagles are doing what they have to do. Consistency is the thing with them. They're going to remain consistent. One-score football games, they just find a way to win. They always win.
It's them and the Chiefs. It's why I'm so convinced right now we're probably getting this rematch of Eagles-Chiefs, because it's the two teams that when everything is not going right, when different game scripts come up and there's different styles of games and one thing's not going right or the other thing's not going right, they still find ways to win. And lately, you've had to win in spite of your defense really sometimes just not being able to stop another team from putting up points. You're winning these shootouts, and it's like if you're the other team and you're saying, damn, we're putting up 25-plus points a game, and we still can't get the W against them, how do you stop them? That's what truly shows a great team, is like this Eagles offense is keeping up with everybody and outscoring them. And I don't think that's even going to be something they have to deal with all year long. So the fact that they win in every single kind of game, Gino, whatever situation faces them, I mean, they overcome it. And so that's why I've never trusted a team more. They're so consistent within inconsistency, which is the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cliche game, man. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Once again, you go into halftime, you're down in that football game to a divisional opponent.
Right.
Things aren't always going right for you. The defense, I mean, you let up all of these yards, but it doesn't matter. When the defensive front has to become this juggernaut, they just do. When James Bradberry has to come up and make a play, he does. When Darius has to come up and make a play, he does as well. Reed Blankenship, by the skin of his teeth, has saved this team twice this season. It just seems when everything goes wrong, like you said, I mean, in just rough, rocky waters, they are the calmest, coolest, collective, and toughest for the longest team, man. It showed again today. This was a smash-mouth football game. You were just tougher longer. At the end, when your defensive front came up when they had to, that was the stamp of approval for me. That was everything. You went into that game in an NFC shootout, really is what it was. I mean, an NFC shootout is either going to be like 6-3 because you're just really good on defense, or you're going to have this type of outing. And they were the better team in the long run. I mean, but hats off to Dallas, dude. They gave them a run. That was as close of a game, and I don't ever want it to be that close ever again.
I was convinced they were going to lose it. When CeeDee Lamb set up that 1st and goal, I'm like, this game's over. And the Eagles found a way. We've been doing this show together for 6 years now, and it's like, in every one of these situations, for the most part, they find a way to win the football game. 28-23, the final score. Want to get more into the defense, Gino, coming up, because they battled their butt off, and they came through in the end. We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. It's the post-game show, and today's podcast is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Head over to LinkedIn, then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions, they make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and then hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This is the Locked On Eagles post-game show. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, football season well underway, more than halfway through the year now. Locked On kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Tanisha Batiste, Jarvis Davis, Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, betting angles, all that and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. The Eagles hold on in a bar fight of an NFC East showdown with the Dallas Cowboys, 28-23. Gino, we already talked about the offense, like Jalen Hurts overcoming adversity with that injury. A tough matchup. The Cowboys pass rush, they really got home. I mean, Micah Parsons, they're using him on the edge. blitzing through the A-gap as an inside linebacker. They threw out everything they had. The run game struggling. Hurts, Brown, Smith, Goddard, those guys held tough. But the defense, it's like, yes, for the most part, they definitely did struggle. The secondary, it continues to have issues, especially in the slot. Sidney Brown, Eli Ricks, they had a tough assignment today against CeeDee Lamb. It took Sean Desai, I think, way too long to adjust to get Slay and Bradberry on Lamb, which really hurt them. The pass rush didn't really hit home until the end of the game, but when it did matter most, again, they come through. I mean, can we talk about the pass rush especially? A sack from Haason Reddick today, Fletcher Cox, and then the 3 biggest sacks in the fourth quarter, 2 of them on back-to-back plays from Brandon Graham, and then another one from Josh Sweat. Me and you mentioned this week, like, they didn't trade for an edge rusher. We need less snaps from Derek Barnett. Do we trust Nolan Smith yet? What do we have left in Brandon Graham to take the pressure off Haason Reddick and Josh Sweat? And BG says, hey, I'm 2017 Brandon Graham again. Those sacks were in massive spots. I mean, that front 4, they came through when it mattered most, and they had to because, Gino, this secondary was on the ropes.
I don't know how Brandon Graham could be worth everything he has ever been paid and more. There's never been a guy who's deserved every single cent in their entire career for many teams. He is that guy. I think Jason Kelsey is that guy. Lane Johnson and Fletcher Cox.
Cox had a great game, by the way, too, man. Fletcher,
dude, how are Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham looking like they're 26 years old at times?
I don't know. Pay them 1-year deals for the rest of time
until they have to
go.
LeBron James these 2 guys until eternity at this rate. And you were right. The best thing I think a lot of us saw prior to this game was Derek Barnett being inactive. Did Nolan Smith really show up in terms of numbers wise? No, but more snaps to the young kid. Keep doing that. And BG stepped up when it mattered. Josh Sweat, elite. Pay the guy whatever he wants, like you said.
What a huge sack in a massive spot, dude. I mean, give him a blank
he
check.
is just going to hit you with that chop under every single time, and it's just so good. His arms are so long. He has that crazy bend. Haason Reddick, as good as he is creating plays on the quarterback, Lou, he's been such a good run defender. Jordan Davis, even with the hamstring injury, just continues to be a beast against the run. And Jalen Carter, the defensive rookie of the year, dude. I mean, just that attitude that he went in there with that little extra forearm to Dak Prescott, the bullies of Broad Street, man. It felt like a physical NFC East game. And what does it always come down to with these 2 teams? The trenches, man. Like, there were battles with Zach Martin and Fletcher Cox and all of these guys that they weren't hitting home at times. And Dallas took some swings at our offensive lineman. Jordan Mailata definitely has an issue trying to defend smaller guys with speed rushes. But when it matters, Lou, situationally is all you can ask. Because in the Super Bowl, in the biggest situation, they didn't once have a single stop. The defense not one time did what they did 4 times in the second half. Take away what they did in the first half, they allowed a single touchdown in the second half, 2 turnovers on downs, a punt, and a fumble. What more can you ask of the defense? The numbers are going to say that Dallas beat the absolute crap out of you.
Yeah.
But, hey, if they can't put it in the end zone, Dallas is a bad red zone team, but so were you. You went 100%. Like my boy Connor in the chat said, the Cowboys were only 60% in the red zone. That's what it came down to. Situationally, your defense stepped up and your offense stepped up when it mattered.
It certainly was bend, don't break in its purest form. And that's the thing is some of it was out of their control. They did deal with some injuries, but at the same time, I think, they bit themselves in the back at times because, Gino, I mean, I was screaming at the television. I mean, how many times was Eli Ricks line? And I've been talking about Eli Ricks for weeks now. I've been saying he's my new Rasul Douglas, as in the player that I'm just like a diehard fan of that's on the come up. But he's not ready to be on an island with CeeDee Lamb. And Sidney Brown certainly isn't either. The fact that it took that long for them to get Darius Slay on CeeDee Lamb, like that's a lot of that is on Sean Desai when you're paying 2 corners top 15 money and they're not covering really Brandon Cooks is good. Michael Gallup is fine. But, CeeDee Lamb is the guy they had to stop. And
there was one guy making plays.
There was just one guy. And that's what's always frustrating to me is like sometimes people just overcomplicate football. And that's what it felt like today is like you won in spite of that because just get your guy on CeeDee Lamb. And at the end, they did hold tough. James Bradberry makes a huge play on 4th down. Slay makes that big tackle at the end. Reed Blankenship steps up. Again, as you mentioned, in situational football, this defense did come through as they have pretty much all year. But I think at times, even though it was a really tough assignment, they made it harder on themselves than it had to be.
I think you have to look at the personnel that they have in the slot, and it's like they're
That's
trying
true.
their best.
Hands are tied.
Their hands are really tied.
But
at
it's
the
harder
same,
for me to excuse it when you have an offense that only has one guy. When an offense has like
True.
three, I understand.
Like last week. Last week, we can make
correct.
that argument, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to defend Dotson, you have to defend McLaurin.
Exactly.
Like that's tough.
Exactly.
But the thing that really killed me is when you see CeeDee Lamb line up in the backfield and we're playing man and it's Nicholas Morrow. Dude, we have to have a check. There's got to be a check out of this some way, somehow.
How do
we
you
cannot allow this to happen.
I don't know. I mean, how is that not something during the week you say, hey, this might happen. We need to have this ready.
We have to have a check that if anybody besides number 2 is covering CeeDee.
Exactly.
And the infuriating thing is, CeeDee had 1 or 2 times where he caught the ball and slayed. But, I mean, the last play of the game when it's not the last play of the game, but the 4th and 8 turnover on downs, you look at the play, he takes CeeDee Lamb completely out of the equation. Mm-hmm. There were multiple times when he does that. But I'm with you, dude. It's tough to ask those kids to make up and step up and make big plays, but I think they do. Like, they don't ever get into that snowball equation. Like as bad as it could be when it is at times when it comes to allowing yards over the middle, Eli Ricks is young, Sidney Brown is young, Reed Blankenship is young, but these kids just keep coming back and making plays. And that comes down to the culture, man. And I think it was go and listen to the Eagles mic'd up from this week with DeVonta Smith. They kept saying, you made me a believer, Nick Sirianni. You made me a believer. That's what that team had to do today, dude. They just had to believe that at some point a bounce was going to go their way, and the plays did. The last play of the game, Dak Prescott stepping out of bounds and Reed Blankenship. You got 3 bounces that went your way. You just had to believe that they were going to if you continued to make plays, and that's what they keep doing, man. What isn't sustainable about this Good Morning Football? I will continue to ask you that.
Yeah, it just felt like, Gino, it's like an archetype game where it's, okay, you've been dealing with these ups and downs all year. Here's your biggest test against an NFC East rival. This is a massive swing. If Dallas wins this, right, they're, at this point, 6-2 instead of 5-3. You're 7-2.
A game and a half up.
They're only a half a game back at that point, and you play the Chiefs coming up after the bye. You got the Bills, the 49ers, another matchup with Dallas. You got Seattle coming up. And so it felt like, okay, here's your big test. Like, yes, you had these ups and downs. You found a way. Can you find a way in this kind of situation? And we'll throw every sort of adversity your way in this type of game, and they still won. And again, that's my biggest takeaway is just the trust I have. I've never trusted a team more. Even like 2018, 2019, those teams at the end, they would overcome adversity. But for 75% of the season, they would not. And so I was very skeptical at the end. It would take everything I had emotionally to buy in, and then they would win the game at the end. But this team, it's like when anything goes awry, I'm like, they'll figure it out.
I keep just pointing back to times in Eagles history that this game kind of aligned with, and I brought it up on the other day's show of that 2018 game where it's like, okay, if Carson Wentz can win this game, we're going to keep him activated. If not, we're going to put him back on the IR, and the season kind of went awry after that, and they lost that game. And you said coming into this show and right on these airwaves that you thought we were going to lose, and that feeling has been there so many times for me this season. But this team, like you said, you can't not trust them until they prove you otherwise, which this 2023 version hasn't. Every time they've gotten knocked down, you keep saying it on Twitter, there's not a better team that gets put down and responds better than the Philadelphia Eagles.
Gino, like you look at their actual offense, how many times does offense answer a scoring drive? I want to actually know the numbers this week. I'll have to look into it, but it feels like they answer better than any team in football from a actual quantifiable perspective.
And you talk about the numbers of Jalen Hurts just leading game-winning drives when he's down by multiple scores or down at halftime.
They're also the best team in the league right now on money downs. I mean, on third down, their offense, the passing game is the best in football.
And will they have to get better at doing the opposite of that and taking it away from teams like the Dallas Cowboys to get off the field on 3rd and 14 and 3rd and 15 for sure. But as we always say, football is overcomplicated. But what is one position that if you have it, you have everything? That's your QB. And now you give him 2 weeks of rest. Go somewhere nice. Go to Cabo. Go on a boat and just sit back and rest that knee, Jalen Hurts. You deserve it. You have carried this team now for 9 weeks. This Eagles team, a very big culture win today, in my opinion. This was, you could have let your team, you could have let the whole city down today. I mean, you could have let Dallas back into this division and so on and so forth. But today you really are kind of cementing yourselves as that kings of the East. Like, it runs through Philadelphia once again. What was the early 2000s? What was our childhood? A lot of people, multiple different decades, it ran through Philly. I hope that's it once again now in the 2020s, man. It feels good to have a team that you can trust to win games like this.
28-23, the final score. The Eagles take it over the Cowboys to get to 8-1. Dallas now 5-3, a nice cushion in the NFC East. We'll wrap up the postgame show coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
We're able to talk to you about the Eagles beating the Dallas Cowboys. If you didn't know, the Eagles beat the Dallas Cowboys once again, taking a 2.5 game lead over that team. And if you were in on the action today, I hope you were betting only at one place, and the place where we bet all the time, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Eagles podcast, the Locked On Podcast Network, and the number one sportsbook in America, that is FanDuel. Right now, new customers get a $150 bonus bet with any $5 money line bet. So next week, just kidding, 2 weeks from now, if you bet on the Eagles to beat the Chiefs in their Super Bowl rematch with a $5 wager, you will get $150 in bonus bucks. You could also bet on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Eagles podcast and the entire Locked On Podcast Network.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. It's the post-game show. The Eagles win it 28-23, a nerve-wracking win over Dallas. Dallas now 5-3, the Birds 8-1, heading into the bye week, a much-needed bye week. And Gino, again, I love the way you mentioned it in segment 2, the way you put it. It's a character win, right? It really felt like a just not a do-or-die type of matchup, but I don't know. It did have that kind of like 2019 vibe to it where you have all this adversity. It feels like the odds are stacked against you. It's a really big spot, not in that kind of situation where it's pretty much do or die. They had to win that game to keep the season alive. That's not the case here. You're 7-1. And again, you mentioned it earlier. It wasn't a must-win game, but it just felt like a high-stakes matchup, and nothing was going wrong, or going right, but a lot of things were not going your way. And most teams in those situations find a way to lose games, and this team finds a way to win. And there were just so many like unsung heroes that stepped up. I mean, obviously Jalen came through, and DeVonta, and A.J. Brown, Haason Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. All these players were very used to now winning games for the Eagles. But you look at Tyler Steen. The fumble recovery, right? DeAndre Swift accidentally hits A.J. Brown in the face. He fumbles the football. It's 28-23 in that situation. Dallas would have got the ball back on the Eagles' 25-yard line, I believe. Tyler Steen, a rookie right guard, playing a new position in the fourth quarter, stepping up and finding a way to fall on that football. Again, that's not something like he's paid to do, but, to come up in that spot, there were just so many guys, I think, that had to come through today that just maybe their number wasn't expected to be called, and that's what it takes a lot of the time in these huge matchups against good teams.
You could talk about Nicholas Morrow, Zach Cunningham having to step up in the wake of Nakobe Dean going down once again.
In the open field today.
Dude, I think he's clearly the best linebacker on the team.
Yeah. Saved a touchdown against Dak Prescott with that one big hit where he hit Prescott in midair. That was an incredible hit.
Play the game. Play of what the Philadelphia Eagles franchise is. Third down, Dak Prescott is running clearly into the end zone. Darius Slay, a cornerback, puts his shoulder into the quarterback, and Zach Cunningham over the top delivers a hit and says nobody is scoring on that felt I wasn't alive for like the 80s and 90s, but that felt like what it would feel like way back then. Like guys just getting hit out of their mind. Dak Prescott landed on his head, and guys saying, you're not scoring. You're not coming to Broad Street. You're not walking in Lincoln Financial Field. Dallas, we hate you. I love that clip. That guy is a legend. But what a week, Lou. I think Eagles fans and everybody deserves this win, because we've been on the other side. The game where Jason Witten clearly pushed off in overtime, and how many times in the 2009s when you played them 3 straight times losing to Dallas did that suck? And now it's a different feeling. It's a different feeling knowing that you are the team that they're looking to come and beat. They came into your house and you defended your castle today, man. Was it pretty? No, the Russian judge, he's probably going to give you a 6.2 in style points, but they don't hand out style points in this league, dude. They hand out wins. The Eagles got 8 of them. They have 8 wins. You
Yeah,
watched
dude,
12 hours ago the Chiefs across the pond getting another win. You have to keep winning, and the Eagles are doing just that.
3 more wins than the next team in the NFC East. The Cowboys now 5-3. You've built a huge lead in the NFC entirely for that 1 seed, which we know how important that is when it comes to your chances of getting to the Super Bowl. But yeah, overall, just a really huge character win. There's problems they need to fix. The secondary is definitely a problem, but Gino, they overcame a lot too. I think the red zone offense looks a lot better too. I mean, what did they hit? Were they
100%?
100% today? I mean, 3 weeks in a row now they've been very good in that way. So they're fixing some of their other mistakes they've made earlier in the year. They're getting better. And now the key is for this bye week, now they need to get healthier because that's for this stretch run, especially with the tough matchups coming up, you need all hands on deck.
These are the reinforcements, man. The guys in the building. That's why it sucks to see guys like Nakobe go down and seeing Slay and Bradberry go down on
Keep our
back-to-back
fingers crossed
plays.
on Goddard. I mean, Bradberry and Slay at least came back in, but
Dallas Goddard got full arm bar, like UFC
I'm nervous
arm
about
bar.
the arm. Yeah, let's hope. I don't know. You never know with arm injuries.
And they have nobody behind him either, but
No, it's a huge. And
It's
their
2
third
weeks.
receiver is like, I don't know. I mean, can you rely on Julio a lot?
Yeah.
We got to find out about that injury.
it's 2 weeks away. Let's hope. All that matters now is getting healthy, like you said. But Jalen Hurts, I mean, not all injuries are treated equal. Not all players are treated equal. Jalen Hurts coming out of this game healthy, walking out of that game at halftime, I mean, that's the easiest win out of the whole thing. Like, you have made
it's all
it
that
through
matters
now
at times. It's crazy.
9
you know,
games.
Like, when Jalen Hurts gets hurt, suddenly nothing else matters, right? I mean, and so when you have, again, Dallas Cowboys, Nakobe Dean losing these players, not ideal, but again, it's crazy how much quarterback matters until you never, I mean, you always realize it, but once you're at risk of actually losing your elite guy, you never truly feel the impact until you're at risk of that. I felt that same way when he went down against Chicago last year. When you saw him get up after that injury, it was nerve-wracking.
I didn't want to have to root for Marcus Mariota in an important game once again, because the last time I did that, it was against Ohio State, and Ezekiel Elliott ran all over them. So I didn't want to see that happen again. I don't think anybody really wanted to see that either. But just what a last few weeks. I mean, it was a tough. We'll get into like the whole like first half report card and like what we're gonna look at for the second half of the season. But through 9 weeks of the year, Lou, if anybody tells you otherwise, this is the best team in the league, dude. It clearly is the best team in the league. You said it. They can beat you multiple different ways. They can beat you with the pass. They can beat you with the run. They can take away your run. They can take away your pass. Their defensive line is unbelievable. They could take away your defensive line as good as it is. I mean, Micah Parsons, yeah, he had 2 sacks, but that thing could have snowballed. It could have got so much worse. And this Eagles offensive line hunkered down. Just get healthy now. That's all that matters. I mean, you're 8-1. Get healthy. Now the hard games come. Now the difficult game comes.
I agree, man. The test is coming. This was a big win. 8-1. Final score again, 28-23. Gino and I, 4 more shows for you this week right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen. Go enjoy the rest of your day. Relax. This was a stressful one, but a win is a win, and a much-needed bye week comes up for the Birds. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.